Hey, hello, I'm Kråkan, also known as Chorus Cornix, and welcome to Yacc, yet another Crowcast where I pick a game I played for a week and then I'll talk about it. This week's game is SILT for the PS4 and 5. It was released in 2022 and it's a single-player horror survival game with some puzzle elements. It was developed by Spiral Circuits and published by Fireshine Games. And also, there'll be spoilers up ahead just so you know, but first a little backstory. So last week I played Silent Hill 2 the remake, and this game popped up when I was doing searches. And it looked kind of interesting, and that's why I played it this week. As you start up the game, you get a bunch of company logos and an epilepsy warning, and then you get the SILT logo, a black background like a void with some fish swimming in it. And then you can choose between starting a new game and settings. And in the settings you can, go through controls, languages and sounds. So as the game begins, you get a machine-like structure and you get a poem. And the art style of this game is actually kind of nice. It has this contrast between black and whites. It's a bit like Limbo, or if Limbo and Hollow Knight had a kid, or something like that. And the poem goes like this. In endless depth Goliath roam, behemoth the waves of cracking foam. Hunt them down, remove their eyes, for this is where their power lies. A great machine lies stepped in a weight. Awaken it to seal your fate. Insert applause here, please. So this game is divided into 4 chapters with some light environmental puzzles. So the main character, this diver, is chained to the ocean floor and he uses an ability with the circle button to possess the nearby sea creatures around him. In this case it's like a piranha and you bite off the chain. And then you swim up to the next area and it looks like a coral reef, but if it was hairy, if that makes sense. Still, as I said before, in this black and white kind of airy style. And then you use your possession ability to guide a smaller fish to get eaten by a bigger one, so you can possess that one, and you bite through some wires to progress. And on the next screen you possess an eel to break through some membranes. And while you possess other sea creatures, you need to be a bit careful because the diver becomes kind of inert. His power has been used to power other sea creatures or control them. The next room holds a giant mechanical heart in the center, and I didn't know what to do here, but you're supposed to break a wall on the right side to progress. It's not always clear what you need to do, but after, trying everything, you eventually progress. And the puzzles in this game doesn't, pose much of a challenge at all, but it's mostly figuring out what to do on each screen to progress. And that's the whole thing. There's some deviance to this later on, but it's more or less a one-trick pony in this case. And this segment leads out of a huge creature's mouth like a fish, and it was kind of a cool concept actually. And then you follow a glowing thing, and I had my suspicion that this creature that was luring you through this cave system was an anglerfish, and of course I was right. So you need to guide this anglerfish, and by the way, this is the boss section, so you need it to bite into pillars and rocks. So you need to bait it where it needs to strike, but it hits the rock instead, and then it gets weakened, and then you can possess its powers. I also found one of those, I guess they're hidden things. You find these abandoning diver suits, and I guess there are spirit fragments of other divers that went down before you. So you collect their powers. I don't think that they do anything towards the end of the game, but it's a nice little collectible nonetheless. In every chapter there is one of these diving suits to be found. Once you absorb this huge creature's power, you are transported into, I guess you get a transport sequence first, some symbols and pentagrams swirl around you with a black pyramid in the center, and then you are transported to a mechanical place. And from here you swim through a structure like a pyramid. It's like a long corridor with weird statues of animals, and then you get teleported by entering or swimming into a dragon circle. So the next area looks like a forest, but if it was underwater, if that makes sense, like a root system. Here you will find some piranhas and other creatures. So you need to possess a swordfish in order to get through some smaller fish and poison them to take out these piranha plants underwater. This was one of those puzzle sequences that was kind of out of my head because I swam into the poisonous mushroom things at first and then I died. And eventually I figured out okay, the smaller fish die, but you can use them in order to poison the other creatures. So it was okay, I have to go through a whole chain of events to actually understand what you're doing. And I thought the diver could only move one step, from him to another creature, but apparently you can hop from creature to creatures if you are close enough to them. And the next area is a huge tree, and in this tree there are 4 small mechanical looking birds, and you need to feed them these white worms in 4 other locations. So you need to solve lighter puzzles in order to get to these worms, and once you do, the the worm will latch onto your face. You need to go back to the birds to feed them. And once you fed all the birds, this huge Kråkan monster will be revealed. And you need to gather up a bunch, like a swarm of small fish. You need to poison them, and you need to get the Kråkan to eat them. And it was actually kind of easy once you figured it out, or once I figured it out, I should say. And then it dies and you absorb its power. And the next area of the game is an industrial-like world with... It's kind of underwater, but it has like chimneys and all kinds of machinery. And here you will find that you can possess a stingray. And stingrays can blink through tiny walls. You also need to power up some machines in order to progress. There's some electrical puzzles. You also get to control electrical eels to open up circuits and turning machines on. You also have these annoying crabs that are like very thick. They're rock hard. That didn't sound good either, but you use them to go through spikes and stuff because they're very sturdy. And that's about it. You get into this huge room with a huge king crab, like really huge king crab, and you need to electrocute it. And it's you need to be a bit fast about it. You need to possess different types of sea creatures in order to do this. But once you do it, it will fall down a hole and you can make short work of him. The next area is a coral reef. And here you will find a diver that has been overgrown by these white glowing chunks of coral. And you also find these glowing amoebas that you bait out bigger worms with to basically explode them. So there's some tight tunnels chasing, and you need to be a little bit careful how to maneuver. And later you have to blow up some more white worms in order to progress deeper down into the depths. And then it's almost time for the final boss battle. So this is a creature that looks like a huge mechanical flower. So you need it to withdraw its kind of tendrils that has been growing. And you do so by controlling them and hurting them. And once you fight the boss, you need to catch his projectile or possess them, I guess you say, and shoot it back at him until he gives up. And then you absorb his power, put it into machine, and the game ends with all other sort of divers. And I guess they were trapped in this construct in the first place. They swim out to the surface, but you as a diver are now glowing white. I guess you are the leading example of your people you raise. This game leaves a lot to the imagination. You have to figure out what's happening. So, gameplay. A nameless diver needs to defeat giant creatures in order to possess their powers to free his fellow diving crew. Control, the right stick is camera, left stick is movement, X is swimming faster, circle is possessing creatures. The square button uses the creature's ability that you possess, and the triangle is lamp, and start pauses the game. Graphics. So this game was made in the Unity engine, and the game is very atmospheric, and it's a black and white style, hand-drawn. And if I could describe it somewhat, it looks like Hollow Knight and Limbo, but underwater. Sound and music. Sound design, audio, music was made by Nick Diamond. And the funny thing about this is I went to the developer's page and I went to the wiki and there was no mention of the composer, and I thought that was very weird. So I had to go through the end credits and actually find out who made it. But the sound design mostly consists of ambient sort of sound drones, if that makes sense. I also like the sound of the shopping sound that the piranha does. It's like, right, it's the perfect sound for that creature. Easter egg, secrets, and glitches. So throughout the game, you need to correct these 4 boss essence to power a huge machine. And throughout the game, you also find these statues. So this is a speculation. The game doesn't really provide any solid answer, but there are these animal creature statues. So what I believe happened is the world got flooded, obviously, and these creatures either became divers to sort of make a machine to, get rid of the water or something like that. Because at the end of the game, you swim to the surface. Maybe it's time to rebuild their world. And I don't know. It's good when games kind of leave things to the imagination, but this is, these are just a wild goose chase. I don't even know if that's like the correct interpretation or not. In conclusion, I wrote, yes, try it if you're curious. So I like the grim black and white art style. I like the sound design. It was great. There's no real penalty to dying, because if you die, you start over at the screen where you died. So this game can be completed in like 1.5 to 2 hours of casual play. But it was an okay game, but it was nothing that I would actually recommend. If you're curious, maybe check it out. But you should probably stick with some other games like Limbo instead, because that's a more solid, a longer experience. But anyway, thanks for listening and or watching, and take care.